Hello, everyone. My name is Joscelyn, and this is the second podcast in our series about Let's Talk About It, where we're basically trying to break the stigma of mental health by just talking about it. So this second episode is focused on being a survivor of sexual assault and the mental health journey that accompanies like recovery and healing. So myself and today's guests are all survivors of sexual assault, and we all actually met through a support group through what is called the Empower Center at our school. So today we all hope to share about how the support group helped us navigate our healing and to share additional resources we utilized whenever we were post-assault to recover. And so just to kind of start off with something fun, in this group we had last semester, one of the women create a zine. And so I wanted to share that zine with you all. And the whole point of the zine was to kind of show how healing is communal. And this support group really showed me the importance of healing in community. And so I thought it'd be a fun way to start with the zine, and in it you'll see some pictures of all of the girls who were a part of the support group. Well, a part of our smaller group, which was an extension of the support group. We ended up just connecting through Facebook and staying in touch through there. But I'll show you all the zine. So let me share my screen really quickly. So here is my screen, and here is the zine that I was telling you all about. So it's called Unapologetic Self-Love, Radical Healing, and by the creator, Diana Hernandez, who's on the call with us. You're going to hear from her later today. But this is basically an ode to showing how strong people can be whenever they come together. And so here's just like talking about power in numbers, some different quotes about healing. And then here's one of the girls in the group, Leela. Then there's Jasmine, who Leela and Jasmine both might be joining us later today. And then after that, we have myself, Joscelyn. Then we have Maryam, who's on the call. And lastly, the creator, Diana. And so as you can see, this zine has lots of quotes about healing. These are some screenshots from Facebook Messenger chats that we've had. And just, again, healing is better in numbers. And so that's the whole point of this. We'd love to now introduce you all to everyone who's a part of this podcast today. So Maryam and Diana, let's start off with Diana, since you're the creator of the zine, introducing yourself and maybe talking a little bit about the project.
Hello, everyone. My name is Diana, and I am 21 years old. For a second, I forgot my age there. But yeah, so this zine, it was, I wanted to share the power that female solidarity has when it comes to collective healing, and how, so basically what I was trying to show was that healing is better in numbers, and that there's power in sharing your stories with other people and finding that community, because I think sometimes it could be hard to experience certain things on your own. But we all happen to be women of color, and that I feel like kind of happened accidentally, but I think it all brought us even closer together beyond even just the Empower Center. So I kind of wanted to show that. And with the zine, ideally I would photograph them in person, but because we were in COVID, I had to photo shoot them through FaceTime. But I just wanted to show the different sides to female solidarity that I was able to find through the Empower Center.
Awesome. And you, can you say what you study in school right now and what year you are in school?
Yes, so I am a senior, so I'll be graduating in 2 months, and I am a double major in government and media studies.
Awesome. And so thank you, Diana. And Maryam, if you could introduce yourself, say your age, what year you are in school, anything that you want to know about.
Hello, I am Maryam, or Maryam, either is fine. And I am 21 as well, and also graduating in May. I'm a senior. I attend Scripps College, and my major is molecular biology, and then I also have a minor in psychology, and I am soon going on to graduate school. And so that's basically what's been up with me.
Awesome. And I just to reintroduce myself, I'm currently in grad school. I'm getting my master's degree right now. And my degree is in community engaged education and social change. So that's a very long title, but it essentially means trying to think of education from outside of the classroom, like how education is very holistic. And so this whole project, this podcast, my Instagram, my TikTok, they are an extension of this final project that is showing that community helps outside of education to help you persist through school. And so That's great. We got kind of know each other a little bit more now. And so now that we have broke that barrier, let's talk about kind of our survivorship and our healing. So as everyone might expect, processing a sexual assault while in school and while trying to be a student adds like an additional layer of weight. And so I was actually out of school whenever I was sexually assaulted, but I started grad school very shortly after. So actually my first day of grad school was an anniversary that was very difficult. And I just remember being a complete wreck at this time. Academically and mentally, I was not really there. But what really helped me through was the Empower Center. And we keep talking about the Empower Center. It's because we were all part of this support group who did it. But this is a center on campus for survivors of sexual assault. And it really helped me kind of persist through school. So did any of you all experience struggle navigating school as a result of your assault? And if so, what helped you all through that?
Do you want to go first? You can go first.
Yeah, I can go ahead. So, yes, it definitely did impact school. I was what? It was like my freshman, sophomore year. My experiences were kind of intertwined with a situation of domestic violence. So there was kind of that layer. And then there were other instances that happened more sophomore year. And so it was really like right in the thick of school. And I think that it was definitely hard. And it was a lesson for me in how to prioritize because sometimes I really knew that I needed to do school, but I also knew that I really wasn't in the headspace for it. And I, at first, was more kind of mean to myself about it. Like, I just need to study. Like, this is school, it's important. But I kind of along the way learned, to be kinder. Like, I am healing and I'm dealing with things, and it's okay to need accommodations and to need help. And so I ended up reaching out to different professors if I was ever struggling to complete assignments, and they were always really nice. And I learned that you should try to be honest as possible. I always told them everything that I could just so that they were aware of my situation, and hopefully they'll be understanding. And I think that even if talking to the professor directly doesn't work, you can also talk to your dean. So I also talked to my dean, and your deans as well can give you accommodations. And this usually requires something from your therapist, but they can provide accommodations such as flexible attendance. So if you have trouble attending school or a class, I know that this is something that happened to me. The professors already know and they're more accepting. And then the other thing is flexible deadlines, which I never officially registered for because my professors were so nice, but it is a really good option. And so
I
those,
love flexible deadlines.
yeah, so those were the biggest things that help because it definitely is hard. I do just want to reiterate being kind to yourself. It's okay. You're going through something and you're already so strong for going through it. And it's hard to also like now have to study for a test. So I would just say that it's okay. And hopefully your professors will be accommodating.
I love that you had like the self-compassion piece with the self-advocacy piece. You're like, let's do both. Like, let me try to be nicer to myself, and let me also advocate for myself to have the resources to persist through school. And then Diana, did you have any other like resources you used during school? Was it difficult for you to navigate it?
So I'm the type of person who never likes asking for any type of help. I'm very independent, and I feel like if I'm asking other people for help or if I'm trying to find resources, I'm being like needy. So I've always struggled to like fight the stigma behind mental health and like simply, asking for help. Um, but I guess like similar to Miriam, I did reach out to my dean, and I think a lot of the times we forget that deans are there for like a reason, and they truly want to provide that support for students. So I did, talk to them, and I think it was very helpful because they pointed me to different, I guess, like student organizations that my school had on campus that would provide that extra moral support for you, and everything's like confidential. So I think the hardest thing for me was taking that first initial step to ask for help. But at the same time, I realized that it's a step that's necessary to happen, but also everyone takes that step at a different pace. So I can't expect my healing to be coming at the same pace as other people. And I think one of the biggest things that I've learned also is, if I see that, someone who also experiences a similar situation as mine is, doing better, it doesn't mean that I have to be better as well. Again,
Yes.
because like everyone is moving at different paces. And I think sometimes we forget about that. But it's always important to, just focus on your own path, and everything will align itself eventually.
It really somehow does. I remember like part of my journey being like, nothing's gonna work out, but somehow it does. There's one other girl, one other woman from the support group, Leela. She wants to join us, so I'm gonna admit her right now. How exciting that Leela's can join us. So hi Leela, woohoo, you guys see the little celebration. So right now we just introduced ourselves and we were talking about navigating school and the resources we utilize to get through school. So I don't know if you want to just take a moment to introduce yourself, and then if you had an experience navigating through school, what resources you utilized.
Hi everyone, so my name is Leela, and I'm in California, and I'm a student at the Claremont colleges, and I guess my favorite color would be blue.
Okay.
And right now we're talking about like being a student, is that correct?
Yeah, navigating school as you're kind of like healing from your assault as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely a process, and definitely helpful to have support group and like be able to be with each other. And then have our community, I think, has been really helpful. And yeah, I would say just that's the main thing. So I'm really grateful that we could be here together. So thank you all again for your patience. And yeah, I would definitely say the community part has been the most helpful.
Yes, exactly. Not doing it alone. And so we talked about the support group, and then some other women shared about how they reached out to like the deans and, joined certain student organizations that help. I also just wanted to briefly like touch on the accommodations piece that was brought up. So for myself, whenever I was going through everything that I went through, I sent like this very frantic email to about 25 people at my school. So anyone that I knew that worked in any office, like I just sent them an email and I was like, hey, I'm going through a really bad mental health phase, and I also broke my collarbone. Like, I'm just a mess. And so someone at the Dean of Students office actually picked that up and they reached out to me and they were like, it seems like you need some accommodations. And I was like, what's an accommodation? Like, I don't even know what that is. And it's basically like this process where I worked with the Office of Disability Services. And so like, you were saying that I got extensions on like deadline extensions, the ability during Zoom to have my camera off like was a big help to me, because I was also with my broken collarbone trying to be in classes, and I'd just be like, I really can't have the Zoom on my face right now. Like I'm laying in bed just immobilized. So that was a big help. Accommodation support, groups, student organizations, reaching out to deans. And so those are all great. And so I wonder, my second question is like, how did you know to reach out to resources, or how did you even find out about the Empower Center? Because for me, it seemed like a happenstance. Like I went to the orientation and there was just one table that was the Empower Center. And I just happened to walk up to them and say like, hi, what is this about? And then that's how I learned it was a center for like survivors of sexual assault. And at this point, like I had not even really processed that I had been a survivor of sexual assault. And so it was just like random that it happened. But did you all have like people reach out to you? Did you read like an email? How did you find out about the Empower Center and about like the other resources you used? And anyone can go first.
I guess I
Diana.
can go first. So I had told one of my closest friends of, the the incident and what had happened and how I was feeling. And I forgot that he was an RA at the time, which means that they technically have to report the incidents to deans. So then a dean reached out to me, and then, I told her everything. And then um, I basically told her that I don't know what this means. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do after. And she said that there was this 5C resource called the Empower Center. And she said, you decide what you want to do, but just go one day. If you don't like it, by all means you could leave, that it's all up to you, but just go check it out. And then at least you tried it. And I went a day, and I think even though we didn't know each other on the first day, I just felt like a sense of community simply because we all had a similar story, or I just felt like a sense of like connection, that I wasn't going to be judged. I wasn't going to feel out of place. So I think that's one of the reasons why I decided to stay at the Power Center. But it was definitely a dean of student who decided to reach out to me instead of me, finding the Empower Center randomly one day.
Thank you, Diana. I'm glad that the dean reached out to you. And Maryam or Leela, do you want to share how you learned about the Empower Center or just other resources?
Yes. So for me, it was a little different. So no one kind of necessarily reached out to me specifically and told me about it. But what did happen was I had really supportive friends, and they had known about my situation. And one time that one of them screenshotted an email. So the Empower Center will send emails to everyone at the school, or at least students at Scripps, and they will just say like, oh, we're having this event. And it's very common that they do this. And one of my friends had screenshotted one of them that just said like, these are what our drop-in hours are and everything, because they do kind of like office hours where you can just go. And at the time, I didn't feel like I wanted to, or that I was kind of ready to kind of face what was happening. So that I kind of set aside. But then I did see the email about the support group. And then this was kind of at a later period where I felt that it was something that I could benefit from. And I know that I was in individual therapy as well. And she said that there are a lot of benefits from group therapy that are different from individual. And so that's really how I found it. It was really just through the Empower Center sending their emails, and my friends just kind of being aware of that as well.
Awesome. I mean, I guess that's good outreach on the center then to have that availability. And then Leela, did you want to share anything about how you found the Empower Center?
Yeah, so I would say my first semester when I was at school, I saw a flyer and I definitely thought about it. And then I called them actually, and they were really nice. And then but I still wasn't ready. And so then the second semester when I saw, I just saw their flyers, honestly. And so then seeing the flyer, then I I went, and then yeah, so that was my experience. So good outreach on the Empower Center.
Yes, and some of you mentioned individual therapy as well. So the Empower Center, along with the support groups, they do have individual therapists that are from like an external organization called Project Sister, and these therapists can work with you one-on-one. So I know that I did, individual therapy through the Empower Center, and it was really helpful for me. Like, she's still my therapist to this day. We're working every day to try to do cognitive behavioral therapy, process, lots of journaling, all of the stuff that is like the work that you have to do to process, like I did with my individual therapist. So do any of you want to talk about individual therapy, either through the Empower Center or on your own personal time? Maryam, I know you mentioned it, so do you want to just share about how your therapy journey?
Yeah, so there were a few different things that happened. The first was that I was already in individual therapy just outside of school, and this was kind of just for like other, like anxiety, just like other things. But then I ended up opening up to her about it, and so that's how that kind of started in individual. And even though like it's not like she was necessarily specialized in trauma or anything, but she was really helpful. But there was a time where she did become less available. She just, she became part-time and couldn't see me as much. And I kind of fell into this gap where I was missing kind of a regular session to talk to people. But luckily, this was around the same time that I learned about group. And so I kind of transitioned into doing group. And then through that, I started talking to the supervisor of the group afterwards, and I realized that I did like talking to her, and I like talking to someone who is specialized in trauma and all this kind of stuff. And so from there, I ended up being set up with another therapist who is also from Project Sister. And so that is still the therapist that I see as well. So it really did help. It gave me a good option. Like, it was great. I was set up with someone individual as well as from group that I continue to talk to and really benefit from. So that's my journey with that.
Thank you for sharing that. And then Diana or Leela, do either of you want to speak to either Empower Center therapy or external therapists?
So I didn't, so the Empower Center was the only like therapy that I was like getting at that moment. But at least at CMC, we have the Care Center that gives your own set of like counselors and therapists if you decide to choose them. And literally, you just like walk into the center one day, you could tell them literally anything, and they find like the right therapist for you. And if you want to pursue off-campus therapy, then it's also covered, or like the school helps you find some funding for that. I never used it, but I know that a lot of other students have also used it.
I'm glad that it like is covered too. That's a big thing. I know at a lot of schools, there's free maybe a couple sessions, but some schools actually offer like free unlimited sessions of therapy. So it really is important to like at your school look up like if it's unlimited, or look up if it has, like certain amount of sessions. What I do love about the Empower Center therapy is that it's completely free. So I've been getting weekly therapy for the last year, and I've not had to pay a penny. And I know that that's because the organization that works with the Empower Center is like a nonprofit, and they're like a rape crisis center. And so just like some advice to anyone who might be listening, that if you look up like rape crisis centers or women's centers that specialize in trauma, a lot of times the therapy is free. And so it's not always, but I'm a big advocate of like free resources. And so if you can find free therapy, definitely recommend it. I see the heart, Leela. Did you want to add on to anything?
Oh yes, we love free therapy.
We love free therapy.
We love it, and it means a lot being in this group of people who are like, we're being open about our experience with receiving therapy, because that is what this is about. Like, so I really appreciate that. And I wanted to mention that through the colleges, I've been really lucky that there's a therapist at Monsoor who's actually been helpful for me personally. I know that's not everyone's experience. I'm really lucky. So there are different therapists that identify with different organizations on campus. So there's like Latinx therapists that do drop-ins at like the Chicano Latino Student Affairs office. And there's a trauma-informed therapist through the Queer Resource Center. And so through these services, we can also get free therapy. So that's been something that's really helpful, and just like tailoring to people's needs. So I would say we love free therapy. Yeah.
Yes, and I'm glad Monsoor is kind of, all of us go to a school. So there's 7 schools total, 2 grad schools and 5 undergrads. I probably should have mentioned this at the beginning, but they're all part of like this consortium of schools. And so Monsoor is actually the hub that all 7 of the schools can use to find a therapist. And so thank you for mentioning that, Leela. And so I know that we've been talking a lot about like resources that we've utilized, and some of us using individual therapy, some of us just using group therapy. But did any of you outside of like school resources use any other resources? So for example, like I know that there's like the National Sexual Assault Hotline, which is like 1-800-656-HOPE or 4673. And so I've actually never called this hotline. I have called like the suicide prevention hotline, but I know that this national hotline exists, and I know RAIN, which is an organization that stands for like Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, RAINN, does a lot of stuff. So like their website's full of resources, and they're actually the ones that operate the National Sexual Assault Hotline. So those are just like some national resources that I know myself, some people have utilized. Do you all have any other resources that were external to schools that you would recommend?
I will say, so I didn't personally utilize this resource, but a there are a ton of hotlines, and I actually work on a crisis hotline that's specific to sexual assault, and this one is separate from the school, so it's not in the Claremont area, but they do serve the San Fernando Valley area, and it's called Strength United. So for people in that area, like that is a good option. And they also do have, I know, like free services, like if for people who want therapy and things like that. So there are a lot of options like that, especially connected to universities. Like this one's connected to Cal State Northridge. And so that's what I would say for that. And then the other thing, obviously, that I mentioned was just having therapy outside of school, because I think that if you can afford it, if your insurance covers it, then I do think it is a good option. They do have people who are specialized in what you need. And I was actually able to find a therapist who was also um, a person of color and a woman. And so that I think helped me, and I felt that my culture was more understood. So there are a lot of options out there for whatever your needs might be.
And how did you find that therapist, if you don't mind me asking?
I utilized the school's resources. So I first had gone to Monsoor, and I just said that I preferred just to have an outside therapy, and they gave me like a list of like places that I could reach out to. So it was like a bit intimidating to then like try and call and look it up, but I think that if you can, or maybe if you get some support, I think it is a really good option.
Yes, and I also did want to mention Psychology Today. I talked about this in my last podcast, but what's really cool about Psychology Today, it's a website. You can actually log in and put what insurance you have, kind of what your budget is for therapy, what kind of requirements you want your therapist to have, like maybe they specialize in certain issues or disorders. And you can like check all these boxes and then press search. And then it generates this list for you of all the people that are in your area. So that's something that I have utilized to find a specialist. Like I'm starting EMDR, which is a specific type of therapy. Oh yeah, I saw the thumbs up. I'm a little nervous, but it's a different type of therapy I'm going to start. And how I found that therapist was actually using Psychology Today. So just wanted to throw that resource out there too. And then Diana or Leela, did either of you want to share any other resources? And it's okay if like there isn't, but just wanted to make sure I give the chance to. Okay. Leela.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to share that like I mean, if there are people out there who don't know about resources, like that's okay too. Like because
Yes.
I didn't know of any resources before getting to the colleges. So like they exist, and like and it's totally okay not to know about them because like I had no idea. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's definitely like I had no idea either. Like a lot of how I found out about things is just like Google, like psychologist near me. Like with the internet nowadays, like you can just find a lot of things. So definitely it can be intimidating though. Like if you don't know of any resources, and I want to acknowledge that too.
Yeah, and I wanted to add that um so for one thing, like so from I know this from working on a hotline, is they are trained and meant to give you resources. So even if you're not part of a if you're not in school or anything, if you call any of these national hotlines and you just tell them what you want, they will literally like ask where your area is, and they will look up whatever kinds of resources that you need. So I do want to add, like, it is okay if you're not in school or if you're nervous reaching out. Like, you can call those hotlines. They're usually either confidential or anonymous, and they are trained to give you resources.
And I'll also thank you for that. And I'll put the hotlines in this description of the YouTube video so that you can like see them. And all you got to do is call, and then they tell you everything that you need to know. And I'm really glad, Maryam, that you actually do this work. Like that must be a lot, but it's awesome that you are involved in that. So I just wanted to give you a little shout out. And then so now we're getting kind of close to the end of the podcast, but I wanted to ask if there's any advice you want to currently give anyone who might be like processing or recovering from any sort of trauma, maybe specifically to sexual assault or just in general. Like what advice would you give someone who is processing or beginning their journey of healing? And I could go first, just while everyone thinks, but the biggest advice that I would give is to not stay to yourself. Like, I know it's easy or like kind of not easy. It's not easy to stay alone, but I think it's natural to want to like process alone or handle these things by yourself. That's exactly what I wanted to do. I'm like, I got this, like, I don't need anyone else to help me. But ever since I reached out and I started the support group and I started like my own therapy, like it's so much nicer to have someone or other people to lean on. And so my advice would be just reach out to someone. It could be like your closest friend, it could be a random person off a hotline, but just try to reach out to anyone so that you're not feeling so alone. So that's my piece of advice.
I think I have like several. I guess like one of them, I think it's like the hardest one for me. Just like don't be afraid to like reach out for help, and of course, like do it at your own pace. But you're definitely like not alone, and I feel like that's something that maybe like multiple people have told you, but you truly like are not alone. There are like so many people who are like willing to like help you through your journey if you choose to, go the collective healing route. Maybe you decide that that's not for you, and you just want to do that on your own, like one-on-one interaction. But there's definitely a community of people who understands where you're coming from. And sometimes it might be helpful to just like reach out to other people and see how it goes. If you figure out that it's not for you, then it's not for you. But you do end up building so many different relationships with people who you never thought you would be close to. Like, I mean, like all of us, we're all like such a tight knit group. And I think that's one of the things that I appreciate the most from deciding to join the Empower Center. And then again, I think I can't remember who said this in my zine, but someone I had interviewed talked about how healing is not linear. It's a bumpy road. Sometimes there are days where you'll be like, hey, I'm making so much progress, but then the next day you're like, I didn't think that I was like back to square one. So I think that's something also important to know, because there's still going to be like bumps on the road, but ultimately you are not the same person that you are that you were yesterday. So making sure that you remind yourself of the many steps that you're taking and the many progresses is also important. Yeah.
Those are great pieces of advice. And I love that you also mentioned like, hey, it might not be for you. Like you might want to just do it on your own. And that's okay too. Like that's completely valid. I know that like this is a lot of, in this podcast today, we've talked a lot about like communal and like reaching out, but I know people who also just do the journey on their own. Like they do meditation and they do journaling and they do reading books, and they are great and healing in their own ways. So also don't feel bad. It's like your healing is more individualistic. That's great too. And Maryam or Leela, do y'all have any extra pieces of advice?
So I do have a little bit of advice, but then there are also just things that anyone who's listening that I would want them to remember, and that's that you did not deserve what happened to you. You deserve to feel safe and comfortable, and you deserve to feel like your body is your own and that you are in control of it, even though I know that it can be hard to remember that. And I think that I guess I would say that it is really helpful to always be telling yourself that, because you really do deserve comfort and safety. And I think that even if you don't believe it, the more that you tell yourself that, it does actually help. And I will say that whether you've recently gone through the experience or it's been longer, and whether you're whatever stage of the process you're at, I just want you to know that you did everything that you could in that situation, and there wasn't anything that you should have or could have done differently. And you did what you need to survive, and you did survive. And that in itself is so brave, and it takes a lot of strength and courage to even just decide that you're going to heal and you're going to live like in every moment, because a lot of people don't. And so I just want to acknowledge your bravery in even just like existing, honestly. Like even if you don't want to reach out for resources, and even just by listening to this, like you are doing something and you are healing, and it is a journey. And I do, like Deanna said, that I want to remind you that even though it wasn't your choice, you now have an entire community of people and of survivors who will advocate for you and who will support you and who are healing with you and who will fight for you. And so you really are not alone. You have so many people on your side, whether or not you feel comfortable reaching out. Just know that you have an entire community who has your back. Like we're all in this together. We support you and we believe you. And I just want to reiterate that. So that's what I would say.
Almost made me cry. Like I'm listening to the words that you're saying, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get emotional right now just sitting here. But thank you for all of those words. And Diana, I think you wanted to say something else.
I just remembered something. I think for me and some of the people who I have met outside of the Empower Center who have also gone through like similar situations is that sometimes we don't want to like ask for help or like tell your story because you feel like by telling your story you're talking negatively about somebody else. But I think sometimes we forget is that we're just simply telling what happened. We're just telling a story, and I think that's something that we often forget because, again, it's like not your fault that you experience certain things in life. Like you just were not, you did not know what you know, like today, present day, you didn't know that before. So it's like we just like have to constantly remind ourselves that other people are also experiencing this. So by telling our story, we might encourage other people to tell their stories too. And again, it's like your story, it's your truth. So there's power in telling your truth to other people.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. I know too, like in support groups, like you get a chance to actually tell your story, and it's sometimes scary, but doing so, like storytelling is such a powerful tool. Leela, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
I want to say thank you to this group right now because the words that you're sharing are very meaningful. And so I want to start by saying thank you. And I really appreciate how we're talking about like this group right here, right now. Like we are sharing, and to anyone listening, that like you are enough and like you're not alone. Like we are here with you. And so those are the main points that I just really appreciate. And I actually want to like go back and listen to all of your words again. Thank you so much, Joscelyn and Deanna and Maryam, for sharing. And your words mean so much. And so to anyone else out there who is a survivor, your words mean that much to someone else too. So just like, and also like just whatever you're comfortable with is important too, because everyone is processing things differently, and just know you're not alone and we're here in this together. So thank you all for sharing.
Thank you. And I did want to mention, like, I'll have my social media in the description as well. And so even if you have like no one, you can message me on Instagram, add me on here. I know for sure I'm gonna play back this own YouTube video for myself. I'm gonna like scroll to the end and just listen to the words. So whatever you have to do. And I think that ending with advice would be great, but I did want to just stress the importance of support groups once, because this support group has meant everything to me. Like whenever I was at my lowest points and I felt like I couldn't do it, like I also struggle with like alcohol addiction. And so like there'd be some nights where I just feel like getting really drunk or like, you know, coping in really negative, unhealthy ways for myself. And like I would just message the support group and be like, y'all, I'm going through a rough time. And I didn't have to say what exactly I was going through or anything, but I could just know that someone was going to like see my message and be there for me. And so I know I should normally end with advice, but I just want to ask, like, what role was the support group for you in your healing? Because I know a lot of people are kind of hesitant to go to support groups. I know for myself, I was like, I don't want to meet a bunch of strangers and like, you know, say all of these like really vulnerable things to people, but the support group has really helped my healing. So I just want to end by like having you all share what the support group has meant for you. And feel free, any of you can comment or none.
I think something we have also talked in the past within the support group is that even like, you know, on days that we may feel down, even if we're not like vocal about like what's going on and we don't tell like other people in the support group what's going on, just simply knowing that the support group exists kind of gives us like a sense of like empowerment and support, because we know that there are people who would care for our well-being if we chose to, you know, reach out. So just like knowing that those people are there in your life, like really meant a lot for me at least. Because again, I don't like asking for help. I'm very like independent, like, no, you have to do this by yourself. But I think just knowing that you guys are like there if I ever need something really like keeps me going, because I know that I'm healing along with other people. And I think that's something that's very like beautiful and could also be very powerful.
Y'all are making me want to go get a tattoo of our motto or something. Like as we're doing this podcast, I'm like, dang, this group has actually really meant a lot to me. Blast it. Actually, I'll cover my collarbone scar with the motto. I have like a cute scar right here. I'll just add it, the words on it.
That might hurt, but
Oh.
So I was gonna say that I actually remembered something else from group. So, you know, besides just like sharing things and getting emotional, it's like you do like little activities together too. Like we had this time where, you know, we each wrote our name on a piece of paper and then we rotated them. And so every time someone wrote something nice, and we actually did this like pretty early in the group. So like I didn't even know like people that much, but like, you know, I still like was able to write nice things because I had heard them participate and people wrote nice things about me. And I remember that I told, like, I wrote on Leela's paper and I wrote, like, I would love to be your friend. And then she actually like came up to me like after the group and was like, yes, like, here's my phone number and stuff. And so, like, that's how like a lot of things even got started. And even if like you don't even have to talk to anyone outside of the group, but just like being in the group and hearing nice things really helps. And also for people who may not even like to talk. So I know like in individual therapy, like you are more or less meant to be speaking a little more, but in group, you can come in and you can not say a word and you can just listen to other people. And it is so helpful because you don't feel like you even need to contribute that day. And it's like, and your appearance there is still always valued. And because and I just wanted to also add that like I'm in another group now. And so this one is like on Zoom. So it's a little different and like I don't know how it's going to be and it's more specific to domestic violence, but just because of like how positive the experience was and even though I am in individual therapy, like there are just so many benefits from being in support groups. And so I think they are really special and a really good way to heal.
And thank you for mentioning that about you not having to speak. I go to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings on Zoom. And I have not spoken any of them. Like my mute button is on the entire time, but like they still help me a lot. So that's a great point, Maryam. And Leela, any last words?
Once again, thank you all for sharing, because this is really meaningful, and this right here shows the power of group, and just, I would say, we're not alone, we're in this together. And I think Deanna had said, like, who you were yesterday is different than who we are today. Each day we're growing, and it's really comforting to know that we have this group. We all go through our different things, but at the end of the day, like, we have each other. And yeah, honestly, like, it just has meant so much. So I would say support group has played the biggest role in my healing. So I'm really grateful for this.
Yes, and Leela actually made us a Spotify playlist about empowered music. So that's also something that I want to shout out Leela for, making it so even on days where I'm just feeling down, I just go to the Spotify playlist that our group created and I just jam out to some empowering music. But I think that's the end. We're getting towards the end of our time today. So I just wanted to thank you all again. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on this podcast today. And this will be posted on YouTube. All of the resources will be linked in the description. I'll get permission from if some of you all want to share your social media. If not, that's okay. But those of you who do share will also be in the description. So feel free to comment on this video, reach out to me, and just thank you all again for being here. So I'm going to end the video now, but I hope you all have a great rest of your day.